Every major city in America is basically running the same playbook. People are leaving, housing is a nightmare, the economy leans hard in one or two industries, and when those wobble, the whole place wobbles. The population's getting older, the closest thing to nature is a city park with a duck pond. Salt Lake City does the opposite of all of it, almost point by point. And once you see the pattern, once you actually line it up against the cities everybody else talks about, you can't unsee it. I'm going to show you 5 ways this place runs the exact opposite playbook. And the last one is the thing that honestly, even a lot of locals don't fully appreciate until they've lived somewhere else and come back. So here's the common belief. When most people picture a major American city, they picture the same handful of things: sky-high cost of living, a downtown you fight to get into and fight to get out of, an economy hanging on by one big sector, and a vibe that's, let's be honest, a little gray, a little tired. And the assumption that goes with that is, if you want mountains, fresh air, and breathing room, you have to give up the city. You have to be in a small town. You trade the airport and the jobs and the restaurants for a view. That's the trade. Everybody knows the trade. Except Salt Lake City doesn't make you make that trade in every regard. And that's the truth. And this is the real city, the international airport, a genuine tech economy, professional sports franchises, the whole thing that somehow also behaves like nothing else on the list. It's growing while others are shrinking. It's young while others are aging. You can stand downtown and be on a chairlift in about 30 minutes. The streets are laid out on a system that's a grid that's almost suspiciously logical. None of that is normal for a major US city. All of it is normal here in Salt Lake City. Now, why should you trust me on this instead of some top 10 places to live listicle? I sell real estate here in Utah, everywhere throughout the state, but specifically along the Wasatch Front, centered around Salt Lake City. I'm in these neighborhoods every single day, from Lehigh to Draper, South Jordan, Daybreak, Harriman, all the way down through Provo and into St. George, and north up into Ogden and the surrounding neighborhoods, as well as Park City and the Park City area directly to the east along the Wasatch back. I sit across the table from people moving here from California, from Texas, from the East Coast, from Washington, and I watch their expectations collide with reality in real time. So this isn't a brochure. Some of this is genuinely great, and a couple of these opposites come with a catch that I'll be straight up with you about. So here's the plan. 5 categories where Salt Lake City runs backwards from the rest of the country: population and who's actually moving here, the economy and why it doesn't break the way other cities do break, the grid, the way the city is literally built, the mountains and how close they really are, and then the last one, the cultural thing underneath all of it, that I think is the real reason that this place feels different. Let's get into it. For the last several years, the story in a lot of America's biggest metropolitan areas and cities has been people are leaving. The pandemic kicked off this exodus out of the expensive coastal cities. New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, DC, all took hits. Some of them are clawing residents back now, sure, but the long-term trend lines in a lot of legacy cities point one direction, and it's not up. Meanwhile, the country as a whole is aging. The median age keeps creeping higher and higher, and that's the backdrop. Now let's look at Utah. The state hit about 3.55 million people in 2025. It added more than 44,000 net new residents in a single year, and it was one of the 5 fastest growing states in the country. And here's the kicker on the age question. Utah is the youngest state in the nation. Salt Lake City's median age sits around 33 years old. The national median is closer to 39. That's not a rounding error. That's a different generation walking around. So why does that matter to you specifically if you're thinking about moving here or investing here? Because young, growing populations drive everything underneath a housing market. They form households, they need apartments, then starter homes, then move-up homes. They start businesses. They fill restaurants on a Tuesday. When you're looking at a place like Lehigh or Saratoga Springs or Eagle Mountain and wondering why there's so much energy, so much new construction, so many new businesses, this is the engine. It's not hype, it's demographics. Now, I told you I'd give you the catch, so here it is. The growth is actually moderating. For the first time this decade, more of Utah's growth is coming from babies being born here than people moving in. Net migration cooled off compared to the wild post-pandemic years, and inside Salt Lake City proper, the under 18 population has actually been shrinking just a little bit. Families are getting priced towards the suburbs where the lots are bigger and the homes are newer. So the young and growing story is real, but it's shifting from migration driven to homegrown, and it's spreading out into the ring counties. If you're buying, that tells you where to look. And let me make that concrete because the numbers tell you exactly where the action is happening. Utah County, that's the Provo, Lehigh, Silicon Slopes end of the metropolitan areas along the Wasatch Front, added the most people of any county in the state of Utah, somewhere around 16,000 people in a single year, roughly 1/3 of the entire state's growth. Salt Lake County came second. The fastest growing places by percentage were the ring counties, Tooele out to the west, Iron County and Washington County down in southern Utah around St. George. So the pattern isn't everyone piles into downtown Salt Lake City, it's growth radiating outward into the affordable edges. If you've been wondering why Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain, for example, went from cow pasture to subdivisions in what feels like 5 minutes, that's your answer. The growth is real, it's just chasing land and price, the way it always does. And look, most major cities are fighting to hold on to people and getting older while they do it. Salt Lake City's core challenge is the opposite. It's managing growth and staying young. Those are completely different problems to have. One is a slow leak, the other is a fire hose you're trying to aim. And a fire hose, if you're on the right side of it, is where opportunity lives. Which brings up the obvious question. Okay, the people are here, but what are they all doing for work? Because that's where a lot of boom towns fall apart. Now, this is actually the one thing that trips up almost everybody moving here to Utah. They fall in love with the mountains and the energy, and then they realize they have no idea which of these submarkets actually fits their life. Whether they should be looking at Draper or South Jordan, whether the commute from Eagle Mountain is going to wreck them, what they can actually realistically get for their budget. That confusion costs people money and many, many months. So I put together a really nice relocation guide. It's actually a web app that you can click on the link in the pinned comment on this and every video and download it to your phone, save it to your home screen just like any other app, and it will have all of the information you're looking for to make a smooth move here. So if that's you, go check it out, download it, let me know what you think. All right, let's move on. Here's the part that should actually matter most if you're putting down roots, because it's the difference between a place that thrives in good times and a place that survives during the bad ones. The context here is a lot of famous American cities are basically one industry towns wearing a big city costume. Detroit has cars. A bunch of cities live and die on finance or oil or one giant employer. And the problem with the one industry economy is obvious. When that industry catches a cold, the whole city goes to the hospital. The jobs leave, the housing market follows, and the recovery takes a decade. Salt Lake City is built the opposite way. The state of Utah, in fact, has deliberately leaned into 5 different strategic industries: software and IT and tech, aerospace and defense, financial services, life sciences and healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. Those targeted industries alone employ close to 500,000 people and pay an average wage well above the rest of the economy. You've got Silicon Slopes, the tech corridor, running through Lehigh and the south end of the Salt Lake Valley with names like Adobe and Qualtrics and so many others. You've got Hill Air Force Base anchoring aerospace and defense up north with Northrop Grumman and so many other companies. And you've got real financial services, including Goldman Sachs, and a serious healthcare and university presence. That's not one leg, that's a stool with 5 different legs. So what does that mean for you on the ground? It means resilience. When tech hiring slowed down recently, and it did slow down, I'm not going to pretend that Silicon Slopes was immune to it. Utah's unemployment still stayed lower than the national rate by a large margin, around that mid 3% range, while the country drifted up towards 4.4%. The state of Utah kept adding jobs even while the tech sector caught its breath, because the other 4 legs of the stool were still standing. If you're moving here for a job, or you're worried about whether your industry travels, the diversity is your insurance policy. You're not betting your entire family on one company's stock price. And there's a 6th leg coming that's hard to overstate. The 2034 Winter Olympics are coming back to Utah. Salt Lake City hosted the Olympics in 2002, and a lot of people credit those games with kicking off the modern era of growth here in Utah. The airport, the infrastructure, the transit, the global attention. Now it's happening again, and the runway is long. That's a decade plus of infrastructure investment, international eyeballs, and confidence pointed straight at this valley and this region. I'm not telling you to buy a condo today purely on Olympic hype. That's the kind of thinking that gets people in trouble. But as a backdrop to an already diversified economy, it's another reason the foundation here is unusually solid. So step back and look at the pattern again. The typical big city economic story is concentration. Get huge in one thing, write it up, and pray on the way down. Salt Lake City's story is the opposite. Spread the bets, stay diversified, and you don't get the spectacular booms quite as often, but you also don't get the catastrophic busts. For a place to actually live and own a home and raise a family, the boring, diversified version is the one you want. Boring is underrated in my opinion. Okay, so the people are young, the economy's sturdy. Next is the one that genuinely confuses every single person who visits Utah. Okay, next up, the city tells you exactly where you are. This is the one where newcomers either fall in love or briefly lose their minds, and it's unlike almost any other city in America. Most American cities grew up by accident. A cow path became a road, the road becomes a street, somebody builds around it, and 300 years later, you've got Boston, where the streets apparently were designed by throwing spaghetti at a map. Even the cities with grids usually slap names on everything, and names don't tell you anything about where you are. Salt Lake City did the opposite, on purpose from day one. When the city was founded, the planners laid it out as a perfect grid oriented to the compass, with one fixed point at the center. The southeast corner of Temple Square in downtown Salt Lake City is literally ground zero. 0 east, 0 west, 0 north, 0 south. And then every address radiates out from that point in increments of 100. So an address isn't a name, it's a coordinate. 700 east, 300 south. Doesn't sound like a location, it tells you you are 7 blocks east and 3 blocks south of the temple. The address is the map. And here's what that does for your actual life. Once you get the system, and it takes about a day or two, maybe a week or two, you can find any address in the valley without GPS, and you always know which direction you're facing because the mountains are to the east and the numbers count up as you move away from the center. People who grew up here navigate on instinct. Visitors stare at 1300 east, 2100 south like it's a math problem, and then a week later, they're the ones explaining it to the next newcomer. The streets are also enormously wide, the widest in the country. The founder famously wanted them wide enough to turn a wagon team around without, and I'm quoting the legend here, resorting to profanity. So the blocks are long and the roads are broad. Maybe that's the truth, maybe it's a myth, but that's the story we've been told. Let me walk you through it so it actually clicks for you just a little bit better, because this is the part that flips from confusing to magical. Say I give you an address, 1500 east, 700 south. Here's what you instantly know. You're 15 blocks east of the temple and 7 blocks south of it. North-south streets and east-west streets are labeled by their distance from center, so the address is basically GPS coordinates written in plain English. The directional words matter. 700 east and 700 south are 2 completely different streets on opposite sides of the grid, so you have to listen for the direction. Once that snaps into place, you stop needing your phone, you hear an address, and a little map draws itself in your head. I've watched transplants go from totally bewildered to genuinely evangelical about the system in just about a week. So why does the street grid belong in a video about a city's identity? Because it's the physical proof of the entire thing. Most cities are improvised. Salt Lake City was planned deliberately, rationally, from a single idea before anyone even lived here. That planned from scratch DNA is in the population growth. It's in the diversified economy, and it's literally in the pavement under your feet. The city is the opposite of accidental, and nowhere is that more obvious than the thing you can see from almost any street corner: the mountains. And real quick, since we're talking about mountains and about reading the valley like a map, here's the speedrun framework I give every out-of-state buyer for picking where to actually land. Number 1, pin your non-negotiable, your job site, your school, remote work, because everything orbits around your commute. Number 2, pick your trade-off, newer and bigger, out in the ring like Harriman, Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, or Tooele, or older, more established cities like Mill Creek or Sugar House, or other parts of the Wasatch Front that are just more established. Number 3, pressure test the drive at rush hour, not at noon, because the valley funnels into a few corridors. Number 4, match the submarket stage to your timeline. Established areas are stable, brand new ones are still finding their feet. That's the whole framework. If you want it done for you with current price points and the specific neighborhoods that fit into each profile, that's exactly why I'm here. So if that's you, reach out to me, let's start the conversation and make sure that we find the perfect place for you. Okay, next up, wilderness is a 30-minute errand. In most places, this is true. This is the one that people think they understand from photos, and then they get here and realize the photos were underselling it. In most major cities, getting to nature is a project. It's a weekend event. You plan it, you drive 2 or 3 hours, you make a weekend out of it. You come home exhausted. Nature is the thing you escape the city to reach. It's a destination, not a Tuesday afternoon. Salt Lake City flips that over completely. From downtown, you can be at a world-class ski resort, Alta, Snowbird, Brighton, Solitude, in roughly 30 to 35 minutes. Not 30 minutes to the trailhead of a drive that's another 2 hours, 30 minutes car to chairlift. There are something like 10 resorts within an hour of the Salt Lake City International Airport. People who live here genuinely do ski in the morning and make an afternoon meeting. The mountains aren't on the horizon as decoration, they're at the end of the street that you live on, and the canyons that hold all of that terrain start basically where the neighborhoods end. For your day-to-day, this rewires what a normal life looks like. A trailhead becomes an after-work thing, not a vacation or a weekend thing. The greatest snow on earth, that's the actual marketing slogan, and the dry powder mostly earns it, is a weekday option, not a once-a-year trip. When I'm working with buyers from flatter parts of the country, this is the moment their expectations don't just get met, they get blown past. They came expecting close to the mountains, and close turns out to mean closer than their old gym. That said, be honest with yourself about how you'll actually use it. Some people pay a premium to be right at the mouth of a canyon and then ski 4 times per year, or perhaps not even at all. The access is incredible, but buy for the life you'll actually really live, not the brochure version. And I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention the one real asterisk on the geography, because it's the flip side of being a city tucked into a bowl of mountains. In the wintertime, the valley can trap cold air. It's called an inversion, and the air quality dips for stretches of time, and typically we see anywhere from 14 to 17 days on average of inversion days during the wintertime. And it's gotten a lot of attention, and the state is working on it, and it has improved dramatically since the 1990s, and most people decide the mountains out your back door upside is worth it. But you should know that it's real, and if you or your kids are sensitive to air quality for those weeks when those inversions kick in, it's a relevant discussion. Factor that in when you're picking where in the valley you want to live. The bench areas up higher tend to sit above the worst air. In fact, there are certain neighborhoods that are always pretty much outside of the inversion zones. So if you need to know those areas, let's talk about that as well, because there are places where you could live and not experience those inversions. The defining trade-off of almost every American city is you get the jobs in the airport and the restaurants, but you give up easy access to wild, open, beautiful country. Salt Lake's whole identity is refusing that trend. It's a real city with real city infrastructure that sits with its back against some of the most beautiful and best mountain terrain in North America. You don't escape this city to find nature. The nature is part of the city's address. And remember, the grid literally points you towards it and everywhere in between. So what makes all of this hang together? That's the last one, and it's the one underneath everything else. All right, this is the big one, the thing I think actually explains the other 4, and it's the part the listicles always miss because it's harder to put a number on it. The unspoken culture of a lot of big American cities is transience. People come for a job, stay a few years, chase the next opportunity to the next city, and they leave. The city is a stepping stone. That mindset shapes everything. It's why community feels thin. It's why people don't invest where they actually live. It's why the social fabric in a lot of places feels stretched. Folks are always half packed, it seems. But Salt Lake City grew out of the opposite instinct. This place was founded by people who came here specifically to stop moving, to plant, to build something permanent, to stay for generations. That we live here, not just passing through DNA, is still woven into the culture, whether or not you share the faith that started it. And you feel it in concrete ways. Strong family orientation, high rates of volunteering and community involvement. Utah consistently ranks at or near the top nationally for all of those things, especially with charitable giving. Neighbors who actually know each other, a built environment, those big lots, those wide streets, those planned communities designed for households that intend to stick around. So what does that mean for you as a buyer if you're making the move? It means stability, which is the most underrated word in real estate. People who plan to stay maintain their homes. They invest in their schools. They build the kind of neighborhoods that hold value through downturns because the demand underneath them isn't speculative. It's people building a life here. When I tell out-of-state clients that the suburb they're nervous about is full of people who've been there 15 years and aren't going anywhere, that's not a soft feel-good detail. That's a fundamentals story. Roots are what makes a housing market durable. Now, fair warning, the flip side of a strong established culture is that it can feel tight-knit in a way that takes newcomers a minute or two to break into. It's worth knowing going in, but it's the good kind of problem, the kind that resolves once you show up and stick around. Now, here's the whole thing tied together. Why is the population young and growing? Because people come here to build families and stay. Why is the economy diversified and steady? Because a community that's planning for the long haul builds for resilience, not just for the quick win. Why is the city laid out on a perfect rational grid pointed at a single center? Because it was built from the very first day by people who intended to be here forever and wanted to do it the right way. And why are the mountains woven into the city instead of fenced off from it? Because this was never meant to be a place for you to escape. It was meant to be a place where you stay. Every single one of these opposites comes from the same root. This is a city designed to be lived in, not passed through. And in a country full of cities people are trying to leave, that might be the most opposite thing about it. So let's bring it home. 5 ways that Salt Lake City runs the opposite playbook from every other major US city. The population is young and moving in, while the rest of the country ages and thins out. The economy is diversified and hard to break instead of one fragile industry. The city is laid out on a perfect planned grid that tells you exactly where you are. The address is the map. The wilderness is a 30-minute errand, not a 2-hour escape or weekend event. And underneath all of it is a culture built around staying, putting down roots instead of passing through. Remember where we started. The assumption everybody makes is that you have to choose the real city or the real mountains, the career or the breathing room, the opportunity or the community. The whole point of this place is that it quietly refuses that choice. That's the point, and Salt Lake City just doesn't make you live with that. And here's the honest part. I came in promising you'd see something you couldn't unsee, and I think we cleared that bar. Reality beat that expectation. Not because Salt Lake City is perfect. I gave you the catches, the cooling growth, the tech wobbles, the tight-knit thing, all of the culture stuff, but because once you line it up against everywhere else, the pattern is just undeniable. This city is the opposite on purpose all the way down. And look, I'm not here to tell you that Salt Lake City is some utopia where nothing's wrong. No place is. Housing has gotten genuinely expensive fast, which is exactly why families are spreading out into the ring suburbs and the surrounding cities and counties. The winter air can be rough on the bad days. Growing this fast strains roads and schools and tests a place's patience. I sell real estate here for a living every single day, and I'll still tell you all of that to your face because the people who end up happiest here are the ones who moved here with clear eyes, not the ones who fell for a highlight reel. And to me, the honest pitch is just stronger than the hype, and it ages better as well. But when you stack the trade-offs against the rest of the country, the math keeps landing in the same place. Young instead of aging, growing instead of shrinking, diversified instead of fragile, planned instead of accidental, mountains woven in instead of fenced off, and rooted instead of transient. 6 for 6, the opposite direction. You don't have to take my word for any of them. Go check the numbers yourself. The pattern still holds. So here's the part where it brings it home for you specifically. If you're thinking about making the move to or within the state of Utah, my team and I are here to be your real estate resource of choice. Reach out to us. Let's start the conversation. We'd love to get you on that path to make sure that we're finding the perfect place for you as well. And as always, if this content is helpful for you, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this that will help keep you in touch to make sure that you're learning exactly what you need to learn before you make that big move. And if you're looking to learn more about life in Utah, check out these videos next. And until the next video, thanks.